Thermography is like using the thermostat across the desert. And if you deny the people the use of the thermostat, then oftentimes you end up with blown engines because you didn't see the heat rising. Same thing. We're now saying, hey, use the instrument. Put another instrument on the panel of you, like the one you have on your car. So if you start to heat up, like your car starts to heat up, you can look at it in time before any damage is done.
When I interviewed Dr. Prystupa a month ago, he made me understand that 31% of breast cancer diagnosis, especially on young women, are wrong. What does it mean? Mammography is a test that has been originally designed to detect bones. Bones is calcium, is a calcification. So a cancer is an abnormal cell that is harder than normal tissue. I know that because I worked for 23 years in an integrated cancer treatment where we practice hyperthermia, that means heating the tumor. And we know that cancer doesn't like heat. Because mammograms are X-ray based, they detect calcifications. And in many cases, doctors diagnose that there is a cancer tumor, a tumor that is cancer, when it's only a dark mark that is calcification. Because of that, many young women have been wrongly diagnosed with breast cancer. But the worst part is they go through the conventional treatment, the standard modality of treatment, which is surgery. And I'm going to be honest, surgery means to cut the breast. I want to ask you all, if that woman was your wife or your daughter or your sister or mother, would you like her breast to be cut if there is a possibility of heal on another way, or if there is a possibility there is a wrong diagnosis? This is the base of this conversation. Jeff, we have several questions. My doctor told me that he does not believe in thermography because there is a large number of incorrect diagnoses. Please comment and thank you. That was made by Joanne.
Your doctor is correct in that thermography yielded both false positive results and false negative results, both of which proved to be true. Thermography failed to identify calcification, the hallmark of breast cancer, and so that yielded what they were calling false negatives. They were saying, oh, look there's calcification here, this is cancer. The thermography failed to identify this, therefore thermography is no good because it failed to detect the cancer of calcification, and the thermography predicted that several of the areas that were inflamed were indeed cancerous, but because they had not shown up on a mammogram, those were ruled as false positives. But history has shown that thermography was indeed correct, that calcification is not cancer and that inflammation leads to cancer. The problem with the studies that the doctor here is questioning were done in the 70s and 80s, and they were done with the, I guess now what we're saying is disproven assumption that calcification is cancer. The fact that thermography fails to identify calcification as cancer is not something wrong with thermography. It points to the fact that there's something wrong with the diagnosis of calcification as cancer. And as I've pointed out several times already, what mammography fails to detect is inflammation, which is the signal of the lightning strike that the cancer process has begun. So again, what the thermography did identify were the inflamed areas that, although when they followed up with a mammogram showed that there was nothing there yet, as they continued the clinical study 3, 4, 5 years later, here came the cancer in exactly the places that the thermogram had indicated that it would appear. So the doctor's information has been the historical, I guess, standard assumption of thermography, but that has since been in need of update. And so we're saying that what now is that thermography has earned its place because, one, it's safe, has no radiation, will never cause what it's hoping to detect, but all that thermography detects is inflammation and heat variances. I don't want to confuse anyone about thermography used to diagnose anything, but in the same regard, neither is mammography. Mammography is only one test that leads to other tests or shows that there is not a need for further testing. But thermography is not a means of diagnosing, but neither is any imaging modality. X-ray, ultrasound, ultrasounds or CAT scans. A diagnosis of cancer is made with a microscope, not an imaging device. Okay, so I think that's the answer to that question, that the doctor is in need of a second opinion, and we're glad to help him see how the disease process now, as we know, begins with inflammation, starts off hot, and grows hotter and hotter. And this is the advantage of thermography, is that we're able to see the thermography, the temperature differences safely with this imaging technique. So your doctor was correct, but we've worked with that data for 40, 50 years now, and we have the ability to clarify it and show where it was wrong and where it was right.
I want also to tell everybody, Dr. Prystupa is going to talk about thermography and why the importance of thermography. He's not going to talk about strictly cancer treatments, because this is another subject. Like here, I want to know the best natural protocol for stage 4 prostate cancer. This is something that we are not going to talk about today, right?
Well, Carlos, no, that's not my field. I would not be able to give him advice on that. I would like to. I do not have. That's not my field. I don't know what the protocol is for that. If he's interested in learning what people can do generally for anti-inflammatory purposes, for example, if they're hosting inflammation, how they might get rid of it. But regarding prostate cancer, there's many, many things available in the alternative medical realm to control that. And again, there are tests that you can do to monitor that. The problem with the prostate regarding thermography, Carlos, and we've been doing some studies, we've been doing some ongoing work to see if we can image the prostate. So far, I would say it looks like we're not going to be able to get a good, clear, repeatable, standardizable image of the prostate because it's too internal. We're not able to get a real clear signal. Sometimes we may get a reflex signal, but I don't think that organ is going to be one because it's so deep within the body. Now, the testicles, for example, image very well. And so for being able to monitor testicular cancer, thermography is very helpful. But again, Carlos, primarily for the same reasons that the breast is so well imaged, is that the testicles are pretty much external to the body, highly vascularized. That means they have a very extensive blood supply. And so they show inflammation very well. But the prostate, I'm really sorry, Peter, to not be able to give you better information than that. That's not to say that you couldn't get a thermogram and see, maybe take the home temperature thing and monitor it yourself and perhaps help us with our research in that. So I think that there's a good work to be done there, but it has not been done yet. And it does not look at this time like we're going to have a clear marker for prostate as well as we do, as well as the breast. The breast images very, very well. But thank you, Peter, for that question.
Another question by Chris. How accurate is whole body thermography for identifying metastatic disease? What machine is best for whole body thermography?
Thank you, Chris. Good questions. The diagnosis of metastasis, and what we mean by that is the spreading of cancer from one area to another, a metastatic growth. The diagnosis of metastasis is done with a microscope. Whether or not the spreading lesion, if you will, is cancerous, it's going to show the characteristics of cancerous change. It's going to begin with inflammation, and then it's going to be supported by angiogenesis. Carlos, it might be appropriate for me to say just a quick word about angiogenesis, because listeners, these are the two things that we're really teaching you all to bank on, if you will, to know when your body might be transitioning or responding or transforming from normal into cancer. That if your body is beginning to host the process that we know as cancer, it has two characteristics which give it away. The first one's inflammation, which strikes like lightning. Lightning strikes, the forest of the cells in the body starts a little fire, a tree or two, pile of leaves burning. But then, when it's on its way to becoming cancerous, it is then supported by a secondary characteristic called blood vessel genesis, or the growth of new blood vessels. This, Carlos, is really the key to identifying when cancer has truly begun. Angiogenesis. It's a big field, and it's one which I think offers great support for those people who are hosting this process, because there's a new class of drugs called angiotensins. And what these drugs are able to do is to stop the spread of the blood supply. That gives time. If we can slow down the growth of the tumor by limiting the nutrients that it's being fed, by limiting the growing blood supply, that's very helpful, because it's going to give her, the male, more time to use their lifestyle to put out that fire. That's what we have to do. People, it's like we put up a special bird feeder somewheres in our body, and we start calling these special birds, these special cancer cells, to our bird feeder, because we're feeding them. Their food is there. What we're recognizing now is that in order to deal with this, we must take down the bird feeder. Stop feeding the cancer cells, as opposed to trying perhaps to kill them. That may be necessary. It may also be necessary to cut them out. We're not saying that. What we're saying is that first, give your body a chance to deal with that. And so that's what we are recommending by looking for the two things, inflammation and then angiogenesis. We can know for sure that the body has begun to treat this as a disease process. Otherwise, it might be just the body doing some house cleaning, making some stones, mixing up some plaster of Paris to deal with some toxins, like making some cement. You know, when they had the accident in Chernobyl, the way that they shut down those reactors is they filled the sarcophagus with cement. They added boron and they poured lots of cement, calcium cement, on top of the failed nuclear reactor to make it inert. Calcium is the great, I guess, savior, if you want to call it that, by helping the body respond to all kinds of conditions. Nothing will form more bonds than calcium in the body. That's why this process of calcification is detoxifying and anti-inflammatory. It is not cancer. Very important.
Next question. I am 62 years old, male in good overall health. I have several what appears to be slightly enlarged lymph nodes in my groin, axilla, and arms. Ultrasound scan of the groin on July 2016. Findings are, there are some names that I cannot pronounce. Isochoic anechoic structures with the subcutaneous tissues of the bilateral proximal thighs. Impression, multiple. Okay. The question is, would you advise a full-body thermogram to evaluate the lumps, lymphomas, and or ultrasound scan of axilla triceps muscle areas?
Jim, absolutely. Yes, you are a classic example of someone who could greatly benefit. I mean, your diagnosis is a little bit clouded. When they say isoechoic or hyperechoic, that means that they're compared to water, they were the same density or perhaps a little bit thicker within the subcutaneous tissue. They sound like deposits to me. Impressions, multiple small lipomas, those are fat, like, I don't want to say tumors, but fat, little small packets of fat within the subcutaneous tissues of both legs and the proximal thigh region. Yeah, definitely, Jim. Get a thermogram that, and then know what they are. Acupuncture, depending on what you see there. Some acupuncture may help move some of that lymphatic, help with the circulation there. Just some general things, Jim. A rocking chair. I'm a big fan of rocking chairs. If you sit in front of the TV or something, you can put some motion into those areas with some gentle rocking. Very, very healthy. But yes, if you find out what's going on with those, you may want to have them removed cosmetically if that's an issue for you. But then you'll know for certain whether or not they're inflamed or not. And I really wouldn't worry about it. So yes, a thermogram for you would be very comforting to let you know that, yeah, these are just cosmetic things. The body's always making lumps, bumps, and cysts and fibroids. We're living in a toxic world now, and the skin is the most active excretory organ. We excrete more things across our skin surfaces to get rid of than any other tissue. So our skin's like a big kidney, if you will. So it makes sense, Jim. Yeah, I would check that out. Do that, and I'll be glad. If you have any other questions, contact me. Let me know what your findings are. But certainly a thermogram would be very helpful to you. Let you know for sure whether these things are cancerous or not, and they don't sound like they are at all. So to give you more peace of mind, I recommend a thermogram. Yes, indeed.
At least we know that a thermogram won't hurt. It's not like mammogram that many women complain that they have all the right, that is painful. And I find it a barbaric way of make a diagnosis of this special and delicate tissue, which is the breast. What is the best diet for someone who has cancer, specifically non-small cell adenocarcinoma? Is vegan plant-based, no sugar diet good for cancer patients? What other alternatives or supplements you recommend to beat cancer?
Great question. You're asking me to that's the college course right there. I mean, what you're asking is a vegan, plant-based, no sugar diet good for cancer patients. Absolutely. But it's got problems inherent in a vegan diet. There are other challenges that you're going to be needing to make sure that you're getting for yourselves. Melissa, one of the best books, I'm about to finish it. It's called Wheat Belly, Total Health, and it's the sequel to William Davis's book called Wheat Belly. The reason I picked this up is because he's talking really more about the diets and how we take this information about wheat and other grains and how we put that into use in our lifestyle. And I think you'll find the answers that you're looking for there. Because what we're looking for is how do we supply the nutrition to ourselves? And basically, what Dr. Davis is teaching us is that the human is not a ruminant. Now, what that means is that we're not a cow, and they have their stomachs. They have 3 or 4 stomachs and a spiral colon and all these other adaptations, which we as humans do not have. And his whole theory is that what we're suffering from, and what might even be a major cause of cancer, is the fact that we are not able to digest all of these grains because they're grasses, and we don't have the proper enzymes nor the proper stomach to handle these things. Because we can't break them down, we're not able to eliminate them from our body. And because there's so many different kinds now, whether it's corn, rice, barley, wheat, that there's just more sources, and they're accumulating in our tissues and causing these diseases. And so it seems to be, Melissa, that the answer to your question is not just specifically to perhaps, I think it was probably an adenocarcinoma, small cell, but all forms of cellular dysfunction if we are asking our cells to host things that should not be in our diet at all because we're not that kind of animal. And what we're learning is that we're not a cow. And all these grains that we've been eating, because we made some, if you will, errors back in the earlier days when we started livestock, we thought that because our livestock could eat grains, that perhaps we could also. And that looks like it's turning out to be an error, Carlos. And I'm interested in hearing your take on this. What's your answer to this question?
What I saw in these 23 years working in an integrated cancer treatment, that women with breast cancer who embrace a plant-based diet, first of all, they heal, but they heal faster than others. What I know in my own body, since I transitioned from being just a vegetarian to be a raw foodist, the more greens I consume, the less inflammation I have. The more energy I have, the better nutrition I have. There is a person that is asking, I think, another question, what supplements to take. We read the question. I don't take any supplements because I have all the vitamins, minerals, especially enzymes, by eating vegetables and green leaf that are not cooked. I highly recommend you to start drinking green smoothies. I drink about 8 cups a day, the whole Vitamix jar. And I love it because I feel light and energized. And I look much younger than you think. All right. Is plant-based vegan diet best for cancer patients? And what other alternative supplements you recommend to beat cancer? Melissa.
The challenge here, Melissa, is to know what your specific body needs are. Your stress level, what kind of things are you placing added demands on your body because of the things that you might be doing, even if it's just for a period in your life. You might have taken a new job, you're taking an added project, and you stress your lifestyle for a while. It's not a long-term stress, but you're really asking a lot more of your body than normal, and you've got to accommodate for that. Carlos, you and I have talked before, and there's only 3 buttons. I see your picture on the screen here, and I see my picture there. If we wanted to try to change the picture of health that we are both expressing, there's only 3 buttons underneath the picture tube there that we can twist. The button called rest, the button called exercise, and the button called what goes in your mouth, food and beverage. And those are the only 3 ways that we can change the inputs if we desire to change the outputs, to feel as good as you feel when you drink your green shakes, and make sure that your cells are getting all the minerals that they need and all the cofactors and things. If that's our goal, it's looking like, and I see Melissa's point, a vegan-based diet, because if we look at the way that animals are cared for in the CAFO system, the CAFO, Confined Animal Feeding Organization, or feedlot, the confined animal feeding business, it's probably not as healthy for us as it could be, if not actually maybe becoming harmful to us if it's got too many steroids, too many antibiotics, too many of the things that they will, growth hormones, etc., to inject into the animal to get it primarily to weigh as most as it can weigh at harvest time. They're in the business of making money. And so oftentimes animals are not cared for well and do become a questionable source of food. So I think that Melissa's question is timely and well taken, but the person who is not availing themselves to the concentration of nutrition, and primarily that's really all it is that meat is just highly more concentrated and we get more from it in chewing. So the vegan plant-based diet is and can be a very good diet for everyone, not just cancer patients. But there are other considerations that you're going to have to address to make sure that you're getting the proper kinds of oils, for example, that you're getting a way to get vitamin B12 intrinsic factor into your body so you can help your red blood cells grab onto oxygen and make the hemoglobin work properly. In terms of alternatives and supplements and things, I'll just give you a quick unofficial list, and this has nothing to do with thermography. I'm going to answer this one as an alternative doctor. You want to be sure that you're paying attention to your glands. Make sure that your glandular support is proper, that your adrenal gland, that your thyroid gland and adrenal glands are on board functioning well. You want to be sure that your lymphatic system's flowing properly with some regular massage. Detoxification methods now are necessary. You might perhaps want to get a hair analysis to see what you may have been exposed to, what may have been accumulated. You're going to have to become, and Carlos, this is true of all the listeners here today, they've already become students of their own healthcare, and I cannot encourage nor praise that enough. The people who are seeking answers to questions, asking questions, they're the ones that are going to benefit. You're going to benefit in two ways. You're going to learn what you need, and you're going to stay away from what you don't need. Really, really important for both of those. I think that a form that will help our detoxification pathways, maybe perhaps the glutathione pathway, are important. You should look at some methodologies for detoxification. Consider an infrared sauna, some oxygen treatment, but get yourself as well evaluated as you can, and then begin to monitor yourself. No stress, be happy, make small changes, do more of good things, less of bad things, and live every day just happy. Be happy and know that no one gets out alive. We all die, and that that's an inevitability, although we want to keep that for its appropriate time and not die too young.
I need to remind you the core of my online video summit, Healing Cancer in this Century. The reason I did that is after working for 23 years in this integrated cancer treatment, and after producing an online video summit called, I don't remember the name now, Cancer Answer Summit, all the doctors coincide, and Dr. Tony Jimenez said, there is always an emotional trauma at the root presentation of cancer. It's one of the causes. When we have an emotional trauma, that compromises our immune system. And this is why it's so important to eat well. If we have a strong immune system, we can cope more with the stress of life. I have another question. Hello, Carlos. Chris. It's another Chris. Perfect timing. Last week, my dad was diagnosed with a large malignant tumor in his stomach. A CT scan also showed cancer has metastasized in the pancreas, liver, and spleen. I shared information with him about the importance of emotional healing and provided Louis Hay another work of the subject along with EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique. It's a kind of tapping. EFT protocol to help him while he looks for a holistic treatment center, although I believe he would do better with the emotional aspect if he's coached. I am very interested in your wellness coaching with emotional healing for my dad. Thank you in advance. Oh, I thought that question was for you.
No,
I just didn't read the question.
It sounds like that was one for you to hit.
Yes, I didn't read the question before because that question was asked, I think, today. Chris, this is an excellent question. It's just what I said before. Chris understands the importance of emotional healing, and he knows his dad better than anyone else. So he knows that his dad, because of emotional situations in life that could run from being treated in a poorly way by our parents, by a relationship, a romantic relationship, by a boss. It could be a trauma that abuse, from verbal abuse all the way to sexual abuse. If that situation is internalized and kept inside, not let it out and heal, it will affect our health. Let's say that we lost somebody in our life, something very dear to us. Somebody died, or a romantic partner left, or our son, God forbid, died. Like I know people that had to go through that difficult situation in life. How can we heal that? Well, there is no medication that can heal that. This is why Chris is asking me if healing, doing a process, a protocol based on energy healing, and it's not just the hands-on energy healing or distance healing. There are many other processes that we do to help you to heal your emotions. Chris, you are in the right track. I would love to talk to you. I would love to coach your dad. And just the fact that you understand of the importance of emotional healing, your dad is in a journey that 50% of the battle is taken care of. Just by understanding that there will be a lot of release of unnecessary suffering that is so crucial for healing. Jeff, the next question. You did a marvelous PowerPoint presentation that we enjoyed very much during the interview. And in that presentation, I understood very clear that mammography is not perfect, thermography is not perfect either. However, doing a thermogram after somebody tells you you have cancer just because of an X-ray is a very wise measurement, because, as Dr. Prystupa just said, thermography will be able to see if that abnormal dark mark that is seen in a mammogram is hot, has inflammation or not. What can you tell our audience if they are diagnosed by a mammogram or something else with this? They say the woman or whatever, the husband. What can you tell them when the mammogram says you may have breast cancer?
What happens, I find most of the time, Carlos, is that the women are answering a phone call from the doctor's office to come back in and get another mammogram. It's time for your mammogram, time for your next study. It may be, but if it's time for another study, why? Was there something found on the last study that warrants another look? Are we monitoring something that we saw earlier that we want to see what its status is now? Well, if that was the goal, then we would compare the previous mammogram to this one. But we don't. Why not? Why, when we take a new mammogram, is it only evaluated in terms of that one moment and not compared to previous mammograms? I don't really understand why that's done. It might be also the protocol to just take a blood test and look at that in isolation for that just one moment in time. And there's good reasons for doing that. But many times you can, by looking at the previous test and maybe the test before that and looking at certain variables, you can see, oh yeah, I can see how this person may have gotten weakened over the last 6 months or so. Look at the calcium levels are down, for example. The phosphorus doesn't seem to be in the right range. There's some toxins that are accumulated. Maybe the liver enzymes look out of balance. Is the liver being stressed? But with thermography, as opposed to mammography, what we're really doing is we're playing a different kind of game. And Carlos, I want to just give this idea to people because it really is involving a different strategy, not just a different philosophy. But I played sports. I know you did too. Hockey and soccer and in games where there's a goal at football, there's a goal at one end and a goal at the other end. Basketball, there's a goal at one end And the idea is to keep your opponent from scoring goals at your defensive zone and for you to go ahead and score goals at the offensive zone. What we've been forced to play up until now is a defensive game around our own goal where we try to stop getting scored on by disease. We're trying to block all the vectors and all the shots like a freaked out hockey goalie and trying to block all the shots. This strategy means that we go down to the other end of the rink and we shoot at their goal. And we obtain health goals. We exercise, we rest, we watch what we eat. We're playing offense. We're trying to live as long as we can without disease, as opposed to practicing with disease. And so what we're looking at is a new lifestyle where we're going to be playing prevention, just like we're going to work on our offensive game. You know, it's a lot harder for the other team to score on us when we're down at their goal. It's a lot harder for disease to strike us when we're down around the health goal, going to our various things, or our membership at the health club, or our dogs are getting the right amount of walking, we're watching our diet, we're limiting those things that our taste bud cells might want us to eat, and we're having just a little bit of that. And we're paying more attention to the fact that my other cells may have other demands. So it's a strategy, people. And we're looking to have a different mindset, one that is consumed in happiness. Like Carlos said, we will not be healthy if we aren't happy. It just doesn't work. And in fact, we mentioned a couple times already, it's almost like there's a cancer personality profile. It's almost like cancer strikes a certain kind of mindset, one that perhaps troubles the body with thoughts late at night when sleep should be occurring and stress is occupying the mind of various kinds, and the adrenal glands are dripping cortisol, the death hormone, and our body is getting itself stressed. So at night when we should be sleeping, for various reasons, we're lying awake, looking at the ceiling, thinking about things that we make into big monsters and goblins and steal our joy. And that is the first thing we have to try to combat, is we have to be happy. A neurologist friend of mine, Dr. Josh Beaudry, is using brain waves to show people their levels of stress. I was quite concerned when he said, I can tell how stressed somebody is by noting how cold their fingers and hands are. I went, wait a minute, that's my field. You mean that we can see stress with a thermogram in the body? He goes, absolutely. If somebody is stressed, they're going to have cold hands and feet because the blood's pulling the blood away from the extremities into the core of the body for the heart and the lungs and the brain where it really needs it for survival. And so we can see someone's really stressed by cold hands and feet. That's a stress pattern. I went, wow, I've seen that so much on so many people. I thought that it was always thyroid. He said the thyroid is often involved in this, either sometimes secondarily because the body gets so worn down that it can't meet the stress demands anymore, and the thyroid gets exhausted, then the adrenal glands run out of adrenaline and they get exhausted, and now is the point at which your genetic predispositions get expressed. You never would have known that you had these bad genes, but when you got yourself into a stress condition, then your familial heart condition, your familial diabetes, your familial things of maybe skin rashes, skin things, emphysema, psoriasis, whatever seems to run in your family, that's when it gets expressed when you get weak. And often the most causative thing for that, as you said, is worry, doubt, fear, anger, jealousy, negative emotions that we just don't deal with. And they keep on festering like an abscess, like a boil, like a wound, and they have the same kind of effects over time. They can lead to gangrene. They can lead to other things that are growing from the seeds that were sown from, I got hurt. How could that person that I loved do that to me? Well, That is hard, isn't it, everyone? We've all been hurt. And we can't change that. That's not going to go away. The loss of a loved one, they're not coming back. And we're going to have to learn to put on, if you will, our big boy emotional pants and live beyond it. Not negate it, not minimize it, not say it didn't matter, but maybe embrace it fully, but then move on. We've got to grow beyond it. We have a life we have to live, and we have to go on, as hard as that may be, when we've been hurt especially. Right? They always say it's not how many times we get knocked down, it's how many times we pick ourselves back up and start again and go, you know what, next time, maybe I'll do this, maybe I'll not, but maybe next time. And it might happen again, but that's okay. We know we're alive. Our emotions tell us that we're feeling things. And pain is also great evidence that we're alive. That's why some kids are bad, because they've learned that the only way they can get attention is if they act out. Maybe our job is to love them better, love them through it. So, Carlos, I just wanted to say that, to reemphasize what you were saying about attitude and the coaching that you do. I know you're so good at that. You're so compassionate. I want to give just a brief endorsement for if that person can work with you, they should take that. They should take that opportunity. So emotional keys, really, really, very, very important. The most important thing of all, in fact, that before you think about buying a good vitamin and buying a good supplement, put on a good smile. You know, wear a good vibe and bring the light into the world, and let the world take care of you as well.
What specific question can we ask our doctors in order to indicate our request for a thermography over mammography and the current reactive medical standard of care?
Excellent question. I would say a simple, just direct question could be, doctor, do you think I am hosting inflammation? That's the question, doctor. Could I be hosting inflammation? Doctor, I read in all the magazines everywhere that we know that inflammation marks the start of the disease process, that it strikes like lightning. Has that happened to me? Is there some inflammation somewhere in my body, which we know from the progressive nature of these conditions that's going to get worse if we don't address it? Am I hosting that, doctor? And he'll say, geez. And he'll say, well, I don't know if he, and then you might say, have you heard about thermography, infrared thermography? And he'll then say, well, yes, I've heard, like the earlier question, I've heard that it has, a bad reputation because it rendered false negatives and false positives back when it was first used. And you say, yes, but those studies were continuing, and we found out that that thermography does, in fact, detect inflammation. It's very sensitive to being a thermometer and a camera. It measures heat, and since inflammation's hot, it shows up. And so you might ask your doctor if he'd be, or he or she would be willing to recommend a thermogram. If not, then say, doctor, if I obtained the thermogram on my own, and people, they're not expensive. These are not $1,000 tests. A full body scan is $500, and a breast scan is only like $250. So you can even get $150 overall, a brief scan for $150. So this is not expensive. And so you might ask the doctor, if I purchase one of these examinations myself, would you like to see the results? Listen to what they say. A good doctor is going to say, yeah, I don't know anything about it. Show me. I mean, teach me. I'll be glad to learn what you might have. Bring it. I'd love to see it. But if your doctor says, I don't want to look at something, I don't know. That never seemed right to me as a doctor. One, if my patient's concerned about something, why can't I just be their friend and say, sure, show it to me. I'd love to see it. You might learn something. So if your doctor's not really willing to be there for you on a level like this, when you might want to take a step on your own, maybe that's not the best doctor for you to be working with. Maybe that doctor isn't going to give you the kind of emotional support that, say, Carlos would, or I would, or someone who really cared for you would. And that might not be the best, that might be a sign that maybe you're not working with the people who are supporting you the way you need to support you. Be supported. People, we don't want to support the system any longer because it doesn't support us. Darn it. We need to support each other, and we need to support ourselves. We need to be our best advocate. And that's why I believe it says, physician, heal thyself. And it says in Scripture that everything that may be known, whether it's about God or his nature, power, whatever it may be known, it says that we can know that being clearly seen from what has been made. Everything we need to know, we can learn by observing. And I think we've lost that. I think we're asking others to do the observing. Perhaps we've gotten a little bit lazy and we're not really inquiring the way we should. Maybe we're just reading things and believing them on their face value, like perhaps television. I think that we, the people that is in this audience, and I realize now that we're not talking to the majority of people. The people who are going to be taking pills the rest of their life aren't on this call. The people who have a different yearning in their heart, the self-expression people, that's who's listening. That's who's going to hear this message. The people who are going to ask, what can I do to restore my health? And that is part of what we're recommending here is patient active, be your own doctor, put your support team around you, learn, read, and then adopt your lifestyle as your therapy and your game plan, and live. Do what it is that you feel that Mother Nature planted you in her garden to fulfill. Right, Carlos, we've talked about this. We are not here for our own purposes. We are planted in this beautiful Garden of Eden here for the Creator's purposes, to bring forth the seed that we represent. What was seeded into Carlos, what was seeded into Jeff. Our only purpose is to bring that forth because Mother Nature wants your flavor, my flavor, in her salad. That's it. And we don't have we're not our job. We are just simply supposed to grow and become a human being. Carlos, what if the only purpose for mankind on earth was to create joy? What if we were the actual representation of the Creator, and our job was really to represent the Creator on the planet, to bring our little piece of the divine mind to the interaction of the human beings, to see what we can become.
And I'm going to read the next question from this lady from the YouTube streaming. We had all, I am sure, prefer anything to chemo, radiation, surgeries, and other practices which have, over time, proven to do more harm than healing. Leo, yes and no, because the challenge that we have is that we are not informed.
One of the things that surgery always needs is a good target. You have to know, like consider a mission if you were an Air Force pilot, for example. You've got a mission to do. You're going to go fly there. You've got preparation. You have to know what the target is. You have to know what you're going to do to destroy the target, and then you're going to come back after the mission. We've got to have the same types of things regarding our strategies for surgery. What's the target? What are we really hoping to accomplish here? One of the things that I think is warranting questioning is, do we really have to cut out those cells? One thing we know about cancer cells is that they are our own cells. What that means is that the reason that the immune system doesn't kill cancer cells is because they're our own cancer cells. Why would an immune cell want to kill a cancer cell? It knows the cancer cell is there to perform a job. So it's not an immune system failure. So with the fact that our bodies are always being governed at the cell level, doing the appropriate things, it means that we take a different approach to trying to restore our health. In that, the old question was, can my body recover from disease? The new question is, can my cells behave normally again? You see, abnormal food and abnormal conditions support abnormal cell growth. And that's what we call cancer. It's the uncontrolled proliferation of cells. It's cells growing fastly. That's the definition of cancer. But if those cells that are growing at a different rate are adapting to conditions, and the adaptation is such that they have to breathe differently. We haven't talked about this yet, Carlos, and that is that another difference between cancer cells and regular cells is that they're breathing differently. It's almost like they go from lungs to gills, if you will, something like that. But they're going from breathing anaerobically, utilizing oxygen, to now breathing anaerobically, using no to very little oxygen. And that was Dr. Warburg's work back in 1931. He won the Nobel Prize for that. So according to the oxygen availability, the cells adapt primarily acidic conditions and toxins and low oxygen, lots of estrogen, lots of sugar. There's a cancerous cell environment. To say it's like a bird feeder that we hang up to call the cancer cells to that site. But when that's absent, when that process is not going on, then we say, well, let's watch it a little bit. We're doing a study, Carlos, that is measuring actually how often ductal carcinoma and lobular carcinoma actually turn cancerous. Are they, when we say that DCIS is a precursor and LCIS leads to cancer, how often? What are the actual numbers? Because when they tell the woman that between 15 and 50, 50% of what they have turns into cancer, and all they have is calcification, we're challenging that. And we're saying, okay, everybody who's got DCIS or LCIS who wants to participate in our study, great. We're going to watch and see if over time, how many of these calcifications turn cancerous. So when you ladies are told, oh, you've now got this, you say, wait. How do we know that that's going to become cancerous? What are the statistics? Those studies have not been done. They need to be done. They're easily done. And we think without risk. We're not going to be risking anyone's life who has DCIS or LCIS, ductal carcinoma in situ or lobular carcinoma in situ. Their lives are not going to be in danger because we're looking for inflammation. And it's not going to suddenly have where that thing suddenly turns into a cancer. If it begins to turn into cancer, we're going to see the very first signal, inflammation. And your calcification is going to go from being cold, like the other patient we've examined, your calcification is going to go from being cold to suddenly start to heat up. And if that is possible, if that takes place, we're going to be able to know it well in advance. So far in advance that we hope to put the fire out. We don't want that fire to burn to where we're going to see such destruction at the end stage as in a mammogram that we think, oh, these cells are so damaged, this organ is so destroyed, darn it, we don't have any options left but chemo or surgery. Those are the only things right now, because the fire's been burning so long, the house is gone, the garage is gone, we just got a shed left, and I'm sorry, the whole place has been destroyed by that fire. Wish we saw it earlier. And that's what we're saying. Yeah, we can see it earlier now. We can see it when the kids are playing with matches behind the garage. We can see the first lightning strike. And what's it mean? It just means that we're going to have a head start now. Carlos, what this is like, what we've been doing is that we've been telling people that they cannot use their thermometer on their car when they drive across the desert. we unplug. We do. We just as this desert, 200 miles, nothing. It's super hot, and you pull up, and they unplug your thermostat, and they say, "Oh, you're not going to need thermography going across the desert. It hasn't proven itself to be any good. And so what happens is they unplug the thermography and they get halfway across the desert. There's no oil in the car, and suddenly the engine blows up because they weren't able to see, back 25 miles into the ride. Wait, the engine is starting to heat up. If your engine needs a quart of oil and it starts to heat up, the light goes on, you pull it and you check it. You say, I'm down a quart. You add a quart, no problem with the engine. That's what thermography is. Thermography is like using the thermostat across the desert. And if you deny the people the use of the thermostat, then oftentimes you end up with blown engines because you didn't see the heat rising. Same thing. We're now saying, hey, use the instrument. Put another instrument on the panel of you, like the one you have on your car. So if you start to heat up, like your car starts to heat up, you can look at it in time before any damage is done.
That was amazing. That was beautiful example. People need to be allowed to use that thermography. And here, this lady is listening from the UK, and she asked, do you know if this technology, thermography, is available on the NHS Lille? I don't know what is the NHS, but you can type it down.
Probably National Health Service, something like that.
Maybe. Or if it is reasonably priced to access privately in the UK.
Yes, the UK does have thermography there. A lot of the work in thermography is being done in England. So you've got good, I think, good providers there. And the thermograms are not expensive. The cost of taking thermograms, it's mostly the manpower for the technicians to obtain the images and the doctor's report, like a radiology report for the interpretation of the images, is really the only cost. So they're very inexpensive, very affordable out of pocket. In fact, probably much less than your insurance deductible anyway. So you're probably going to have to pay for it. But they're very affordable, a couple $100.
Jeff, do you have a final ideas?
I would just ask everyone to share this message. It's simple. Cancer is hot. Normal is not. Okay. Don't take any tissue until you take the temperature. If it's not inflamed, it's not growing into disease, rest assured of that. Trust your bodies. You are wonderfully made. You are unbelievably made. And Mother Nature, our source God, if you will, is conspiring to do everything they can to have your life be a success. You were brought into this reason for that. And so be happy, be joyful, be blissful, and bring the light. And please share this message with everyone that cancer is hot and normal is not. That's all it is.
I would love to add is to all women, tried a thermography, and when from the doctor office they call you and they almost force you to take the mammography, think it twice and do a thermography. And I think the peace of mind that you are going to have is way more important than the mammography. Thank you so much, Jeff. It was an enlightening conversation that took a turn I never imagined. It was fantastic.
People, I've known Carlos for 2 years now. We've been working at this. Please support the work. If you can make a donation, if you have friends, or you can get some money for this great cause, please. This is all privately funded. We have tremendous industrial, if you will, opposition. So telling this message is being done by Carlos. He's working so hard. I'm probably one of the few people who know how hard he's working at this. Please, I ask you to support the work that's being done here with Carlos and healing cancer in this century, Carlos. I want to thank you so much for the work that you're doing. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, everybody. And if you have further questions later on, you can type them in the YouTube video, you can type them in Facebook, or send us an email. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jeff. Big hug.
Thank you.